You won't believe what just happened at Raila Odinga's burial. A fashion designer, Bolo Bespoke, just turned Kenya's emotional farewell into the most controversial moment of 2025. Bolo Bespoke posted something so shocking that the entire nation has erupted in a fury. What did Bolo Bespoke say? And why is everyone calling him out? And did he really force his way next to President William Ruto at the gravesite? Just hours after the burial, as families gathered in private grief as the nation processed the loss of an icon, Bolo Bespoke went to social media, and what he posted will go down as one of the most tone-deaf, self-centered moments in Kenya's social media history. He wrote, and I quote, "Thank you, William Samoei Ruto, for standing side by side with me during a historic moment in our nation as we lay to rest Honorable Raila Odinga in peace." And let that sink in. Thank you for standing side by side with me, not with the family, not with the nation, with me, as if the burial of Raila Odinga, the people's president, the father of democracy, the man who fought for Kenya for 5 decades, was somehow about Bolo Bespoke and his proximity to power. The post was accompanied by a photo, and the photo that Bolo had clearly waited for, the photo that witnesses say he deliberately timed. In the image, President Ruto is throwing soil into Raila's grave, and right beside him, almost perfectly positioned for the camera, is Bolo Bespoke, also throwing soil as if they were equals, standing together at this historic moment. And within minutes, the backlash began, and it was brutal on social media. Kenya has not been holding back, and the comment section exploded with anger, disgust, and disbelief. People who had been mourning suddenly found themselves enraged by what they saw as a shameless hijacking of a sacred moment. One Kenyan wrote, "We saw this coming. You delayed so that you could get a picture with him. He wasn't even aware you were there." Another one commented, "Those who watched saw what you did there. Dilly-dally, and you waited for him and timed him when he was throwing his and you threw yours." The accusations were relentless. The things we do for social media captions. "Are you sure Ruto was standing side by side to console you?" Someone asked sarcastically. Another added, "Standing with you side by side, you say. Was he even aware you were to attend the burial, or was it just a coincidence you met at the graveyard?" But perhaps the most cutting moment came from a Kenyan who wrote, "How do you even thank someone who has no interest in your present beside him? That was just a coincidence, nothing attached." The anger was not just about the post, it was about what the post represented. And in a moment that should have been entirely about Raila Odinga, about his legacy and about his family's grief, about a nation saying goodbye to a hero, Bolo Bespoke had made it about himself. He had turned a funeral into a networking opportunity. He had transformed grief into a photo op, and Kenyans were not having it. Social media users have begun digging deeper, and they found other photos from the burial showing Bolo Bespoke and others strategically positioning themselves near President Ruto throughout the ceremony. One article even suggested that some individuals were using such photos to lure foreigners into business scams, using their proximity to powers as proof of legitimacy. But let's zoom out for a moment. Let's understand why these hurt so deeply, because this is not just about one man's post. This is about respect, and this is about understanding the weight of a moment. This is about knowing when to step back and be bigger than yourself. Raila Odinga died on October 15 of 2025 in a hospital in Kerala, India. He was just 80 years old, and his death came suddenly, a cardiac arrest that shocked the nation. The man who had survived political imprisonment, torture, exile, assassination attempts, and 5 failed presidential bids had finally met his end, not in the political battlefield he knew so well, but in a hospital bed, far from home. The nation mourned like it had never mourned before, and when his body arrived at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport on October 16th, the crowd was so overwhelming that security had to revise their official reception plans. Tens of thousands showed up, and the venue for public viewing had to be moved from Parliament Building to Nyayo Stadium to accommodate the masses. At the state funeral on October 17th, President Ruto himself gave an emotional tribute. He called Raila the people's president. He is confident, someone consulted on critical national matters, and former President Uhuru Kenyatta was there. Former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo flew in, and regional leaders from across East Africa attended. The military provided full honors, and this was no ordinary burial. This was a state funeral for a statesman. And throughout all of this, there was Bolo Bespoke. To be fair, he had been tasked with an emotional responsibility. He had dressed Mama Raila Odinga for the funeral. In a heartfelt Instagram post, he had earlier written about the pain of creating that dress, saying, "In my 10 years as a fundi, I have never tailored a dress with this much pain. Every stitch carried a story, a prayer and a tear, a memory." The post was appropriate. The post was touching. That post was about service, about honoring the family, and about being part of something bigger than himself. Kenyans praised him for it. They thanked him for making Mama Raila look regal in her darkest hour. They acknowledged his skill and his sensitivity. So what changed? What changed is that somewhere between dressing Mama Raila and standing at that gravesite, Bolo Bespoke lost the plot. He forgot that this moment was not about him. He forgot that being at a state funeral, being trusted with such an important role, comes with a responsibility to remain in the background, to serve, not to be seen, to honor, not to promote yourself. And this is where psychology gets interesting, because this isn't just about Bolo Bespoke. This is about a culture we're seeing more and more in our society. A culture where everything becomes content, where every moment, no matter how sacred, becomes an opportunity for self-promotion, where proximity to power becomes currency, where a photo with the president at a funeral matters more than the funeral itself. Think about it. Bolo Bespoke is a celebrity designer. His entire brand is built on visibility and on being seen with the right people, on documenting his access to Kenya's elite. In his world, that photo with President William Ruto was gold. It was proof of his status, proof of his connections, proof that he belongs in the inner circles of power. So where does this leave us? What lesson do we learn here? Because there is a lesson, and it is bigger than Bolo Bespoke, bigger than the controversial post, and bigger than even Raila Odinga's funeral. The lesson is this: not everything is about you. Not every moment needs to be captured and broadcast. Not every photo needs to be posted. Not every connection needs to be advertised. As of now, Bolo Bespoke has not issued any apology or clarification. The post remains up and the controversy continues to rage, and Kenyans are left shaking their head, wondering how someone could read the room so badly, how someone could misunderstand the assignment so completely. Instead, Raila Odinga deserved better, his family deserved better, the nation deserved better, and ironically, Bolo Bespoke deserved better from himself, because he had an opportunity to be part of something truly meaningful, to serve as a historic moment, to be remembered fondly by a family in mourning. But instead, he'll be remembered as the guy who made Raila's funeral about himself, the guy who turned a gravesite into a photo op, the guy who thanked the president for standing beside him when the only person anyone should have been thinking about that day was the man being laid to rest. Rest in peace, Raila Odinga. Your legacy will outlive us all. And as for the rest of us, let's learn from this moment. Let's do better, and let's understand that some things are bigger than our Instagram feeds. Some moments demands our silence, our respect, and our humility. If this story shocked you, if this story made you think, share this video. Let's have this conversation, because it matters, and it matters more than you think.